Hi, this is John, and I want to talk about how the rapture could possibly occur. The rapture is described in the Bible as the event when all true believers in Jesus Christ will be caught up and ascend to be with the Lord. Matthew 24:40 says the two men will be in a field. One will be taken and one will not. In essence, all believers in Christ will simply disappear in an instant. The believers will be taken and non-believers will be left behind. 1 Thessalonians 5 indicates that the event will be a black swan type event, coming quickly and unexpectedly, like a thief in the night. Further evidence of the rapture being completely sudden and unexpected can be found in Matthew 24:37 and 38. This verse compares the day of the rapture to the last days of Noah. Right up until the flood, people acted as if it was just another day. So how could millions, if not billions of people just vanish? How could it be explained, and what would the reaction be of those left behind? I would like to present several possible scenarios. The first scenario is that the rapture will be recognized as a religious event. In other words, many people will disappear in full view of many witnesses, leaving no other possible explanation. There will be video and mass media proof of the event, making it undeniable. An example of a true mass religious event occurring can be found in the movie The Miracle of Our Lady of Fatima. On October 13, 1917, about 70,000 people gathered at Fatima, Portugal, and witnessed a miraculous event that included mass healings and severe and bizarre movements of the sun. Various newspapers ran the story. There wasn't any means for mass communication back then, so the story spread much slower. Some believed, some didn't. The rapture could be treated in much the same way. The only recourse for world governments would be to suppress the truth by attempting to control mass communication after the fact. If you don't think any and every government can do this, do a simple Google search on truth suppression. There are literally millions of pages discussing techniques used by governments on suppressing the facts. They've actually made both an art and science out of it. Under this scenario, some will believe that the rapture of the Christian church had occurred. Some will accept it and some won't. This will lead to two categories of people, those who will convert and those who will deny. Eventually, this will lead to the final conflict known as Armageddon. The second possible scenario for how the rapture can unfold is to have it masked by natural events. Both NASA and MIT have stated that the next year or two will come with a new solar cycle, and with it, major solar storms. A solar storm with a sufficient magnitude would act as an EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, throughout much, if not the entire world. That means that we, as a planet, could be without electricity for weeks, months, or even years. The one thing that separates us from the previous 50 generations is our technology. All these things have one thing in common. They're all means for mass communication, and they will all be useless about 3 seconds after hit with an EMP. This has actually happened before. But the world's electric grid and infrastructure was small, and the people's dependency on it was equally as small. In 1859, a severe geomagnetic solar storm knocked out the telegraph systems all over the world. Sparks showered from telegraph machines and bright auroras illuminated the night skies all over the planet. This has become known as the Carrington event, and if happened today would be catastrophic to the planet's electrical grid and infrastructure. The government has stated that the odds of another occurrence of the Carrington event in 2013 is about 12%. However, take a look at number 5. Once our capability for mass communication is gone, so is our ability to send and receive news. In other words, just about anything can happen, and unless it happened right in front of us, we wouldn't know about it. If you want to check on your friends or family, you'll have to walk or find a bicycle, because with a strong enough EMP, even your car won't start. So what happens when the lights come back on after an extended blackout and some people are just gone? Actually not a lot, especially if this mass disappearance happened and the power didn't come back up for another month. There would probably be many missing person reports and many stories of people disappearing. But will that be seen any differently than the thousands of missing person reports that are currently filed each day? And would it be taken more seriously than the millions of reported alien abductions? What will the government's take on this be? Basically, they can say whatever they want. They can claim some strange disease that liquefies flesh is the reason for the many disappearances, or blame the solar flare itself for vaporizing those who disappeared. If you think these are absurd explanations, remember we're dealing with world governments that expect us to believe that printing trillions in currency won't lead to inflation, and that Jesus wants us to pay higher taxes. As ridiculous as the explanation may be, some will believe the government and some won't. If enough people believed, this could actually lead to a temporary prosperity. Remember, it's not just millions of people now removed from society, but are very specific people whose ideology is diametrically opposed to those left behind. Without this conflict, they can and will recover rather quickly. And with the world population now reduced, issues like unemployment and feeding the hungry can be more easily addressed. This prosperity will be short-lived, however, as the Antichrist in politics will lead the people down a dark path. The next scenario I want to talk about is the rapture being explained as an extraterrestrial event, meaning that UFOs and aliens will somehow play a factor in the explanation of the rapture event. Not too long ago, less than 20% of people surveyed believed in the existence of UFOs and alien beings. A recent National Geographic poll indicates that percentage is now as high as 36%. The one and only reason for the other 64% comes from the lack of one thing: government acknowledgement. If the governments of the world simply acknowledged the existence of extraterrestrials as the reason for the rapture event, I think it would be very easily accepted, especially if these beings revealed themselves as such. Think about how far we've come just in these last 40 years on the subject. We went from silly low-budget flicks about alien invasions to sophisticated complex storylines involving the science behind UFOs. The History Channel has a documentary-style series called Ancient Aliens. The Sci-Fi Channel has several truth-gathering detective-style series that deal with the alien phenomenon, and the National Geographic Channel has a series called Chasing UFOs. To give a little background which could give this scenario more legitimacy, consider the following. The Old Testament documents an incident where 200 fallen angels landed on Mount Hermon in Israel. These demons mated with the women of the time and created a race of beings known as the Nephilim. Mount Hermon is located on the 33.3 degree north parallel. Why is this number significant? 33.3 is 1/3, and 1/3 is the percentage of the angels that rebelled against God. The exact global polar opposite of Mount Hermon on the 33.3 degree north parallel is Roswell, New Mexico. Roswell, New Mexico was the site of the alleged crash of the alien craft that was supposedly covered up by the U.S. government. This event happened in 1947. The very same year that Israel was re-established as a state, fulfilling another end times prophecy. This is just one of the many fascinating connections between alien lore and demon documentation. Two leading researchers on this connection are Chuck Missler and Rob Skiba. I'm leaving links to some of their lectures in the description below, and I highly recommend watching them. Both of these individuals make the case that aliens are nothing more than demons, but don't think of demons as medieval creatures with horns and pitchforks. Think of them as malevolent beings that don't have our best interests in mind. So what would the government explanation be for this scenario? They can't say the aliens took the Christians away. This would imply a rapture type event. They'd have to say just the opposite. They'll have to claim that the aliens took those not enlightened, clearing the way for the utopia that now awaits. As I alluded to in the previous scenario, once an entire group of people of one ideology is removed, the remaining people are apt to believe themselves as having the correct or moral belief. The final scenario I'd like to discuss is the rapture being explained as some combination of the previous three scenarios. For example, a solar flare could knock out our electric grid, and when the power returned, the government's explanation for the disappearance of the people could be some alien intervention. Or aliens can make a grand entrance a la V, Independence Day, Alien Nation, District 9, Skyline, or any other number of TV shows or movies that has beset this generation, and they can intertwine their arrival with a religious event by claiming that they come from God, or even that Jesus came from them. UFOlogists claim that aliens have been with humanity from the beginning and have even guided our race, socially, genetically, and spiritually. An alien presence with a public confirmation of such a declaration has become known as the Great Deception. How many people will actually be taken or caught up in the rapture? 1 Thessalonians 4 says the dead will be taken first, but how many alive today will be taken? In order to answer that, we need to know how many people alive today are truly Christian. No one can answer that question with any degree of accuracy, but the Bible implies the percentage will be low. 2 Timothy 3 states that the generation that sees the rapture will be lovers of money, arrogant, revilers, gossips, reckless, and lovers of pleasure. I imagine that the percentage of people taken will be high enough to be noticed, but low enough for the world social order to recover somewhat quickly. And the social order needs to recover quickly, as Revelations describes at least the first part of the tribulation as being prosperous. But even if a higher percentage were to be whisked away in the rapture, I don't believe it would even be accepted as a religious event. How could it be when many people left behind will believe they're Christian, and if it was the rapture, they would have surely been taken? Or when many religious leaders, maybe even the Pope, are still around saying that it couldn't have possibly been the rapture? Many times, prophetic events follow a logical sequence that at the time makes sense, but once you think about it, you actually realize a prophecy has been fulfilled. In other words, how these events happen will most likely make sense, but we must dig deeper if we're to find a spiritual answer as to why they happened. So how can we prepare ourselves? The first thing you need to do is to make a free will decision to actually want to be spiritually prepared for this event. Then open your heart to the word of the Lord. Only then can you be saved. I'm leaving a link in the description below to a YouTube video that talks about how to be spiritually prepared for the rapture. If you want to live the Christian lifestyle, this is a good way to start. If you're already living it, or think you are, it never hurts to confirm it, does it?